new study backs up what we already kind of know, that most of the aid during the pandemic went to the wealthy. Specifically, the Payroll Protection Program, or Paycheck Protection Program. Now, that was launched in April of 2020 and issued about $510 billion in uncollateralized, low-interest loans that were then forgiven, in many cases, of up to $10 million by the end of the year. Now, of course, it was hailed as a boon for keeping the small businesses open and workers being able to continue working and making a living. But in reality, of course, as we all know, workers were not the main beneficiaries of the Paycheck Protection Program. In fact, according to a study that was released earlier this month by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Professor David Autor, as well as economists from the Federal Reserve, an estimated $115 billion to $175 billion in PPP loans went towards paychecks. So now 115 to 175 out of the $510 billion. So where did the rest go? The remaining 66 to 77% went to business owners, stakeholders, including shareholders, creditors, and suppliers, CEOs, et cetera, et cetera. So just a massive amount of corporate welfare. Now, the authors also estimated the program spent $170,000 to $257,000 per job year saved. So that's an incredibly high cost to save a job, which again, didn't go to the person working the job, it went to the corporation. So now my question is, would it not have been more effective to just send that aid to regular people, regular workers? You know, instead of giving it to CEOs and executives, shareholders, etc. Keep that in mind. So now the study also estimated that $365.9 billion, or 72% of the PPP dollars, ultimately flowed to the top fifth of high earners, who make up a disproportionate amount of the country's income, and business owners. The bottom quintile got just $13.2 billion, or a total of 2.6%. Wow. Now, as far as the effects on the economy, this is gonna blow your mind. The authors also noted that the PPP's per dollar boost to GDP was about 0.36, according to the CBO, versus the stimulus checks and enhanced unemployment benefits, which had a total of 0.60 and 0.67 per dollar boost. Meaning that, oh, look at that, direct aid to the American people was twice as effective as giving all of these billions of dollars to these corporations. So it looks like I was right. It turns out it would have been better off had they just given the money to regular working people. Who knew, right? Instead, what did they do? Well, they did stock buybacks. They awarded shareholders and CEOs millions and millions of dollars, as their workers got nothing, just absolutely nothing. Now, the study reads, actually, taking account of the highly distributionally skewed incidence of PPP payments, we concur that PPP was likely the least effective of the three programs in boosting the macroeconomy. No kidding. So now the authors put a lot of the blame on the minimal loan qualifications. So now instead of course, prioritizing small business, well, they just let anybody dip in. In fact, you had to have fewer than 500 employees. And so a lot of places can get around that by, of course, contracting and subcontracting. So where they can say, oh, these aren't actually employees, or, oh, these are independent contractors. Yes, even though these companies are incredibly wealthy. So you got places like Uber, places like Lyft that have gotten billions of dollars, that they don't technically have employees. No. So we have fewer than 500 actual employees, even though they might have 1,000 independent contractors or more. Well, and they still qualified for this PPP bailout money. Great. So now that was part of the problem. Now the economists recommended that the U.S. actually prepare a more sophisticated administrative system like those of other high-income countries so it can execute programs that target the most needy Americans during future emergencies. But then again, that would not be, I don't know, good for the wealthy. That wouldn't be good if you wanted to actually transfer wealth upwards. So, yeah, obviously, we can't do that. I mean, how would the rich ever exploit everyone else for their own gain? Guys, this isn't an oversight. This is by design. Of course, the PPP program was designed as a massive transfer of wealth up to the rich. Look, you had the wealthy and members of Congress who, again, took advantage of the situation. The members of Congress, paid obviously by these same corporations that used this massive need that was caused by the pandemic to enrich themselves at the expense of regular working people. Regular working people who, by the way, took pay cuts. You saw a lot of companies, John Deere is a great example, where you had a lot of workers that, lost out on benefits, lost out on pay raises, took pay cuts, and all that stuff to try to help the companies survive during the pandemic. And then when it was, well, it's still not over, but, when they start to get it, profitable again, these companies did, and opened back up, the workers said, okay, how about you give us back, what we had, at least. And the companies say, no, we're not going to do that. Why would we give you back anything? Not only did we get rich off, paying you less and giving you less, we also took millions of dollars in government handouts. Because of course they would. It's about greed. And this is all why these same workers only received a $1,200 check or a $600 check or a $1,400 check. If you're lucky to get the full amounts of all of those, plus some unemployment benefits, again, if you were lucky to be an actual employee and not an independent contractor, and all of that. And by the way, all the inflation talk that's going on? Yeah, they're blaming you for that. For you for getting these checks and you for getting these unemployment benefits. I wonder who the real, what's the real cause of the inflation that we're seeing? I mean, maybe it could be, corporations taking all these billions of dollars and then raising their prices anyway. And look, all of that, I mean, the most effective programs were the ones that gave direct aid to the average American worker. The most effective. And yet, what did we do? Ended it as soon as humanly possible. Because that's how this country works. It is owned by the corporations and run solely for the benefit of the corporations. It's corporate rule.